Welcome viewers, today we will go over the 1973 thriller horror film, Don't Look Now, an adaptation from a novel written by Dame Daphne du Maurier. Born in London, she was the middle child of actor-manager Sir Gerald du Maurier and actress Muriel Beaumont. Her elder sister, Angela du Maurier, became an actress and later also a writer, and her younger sister Jean was a painter. She was also a cousin of the Llewellyn and Davis boys, who inspired the Lost Boys and Peter Pan. As a young child, Daphne met many theatre actors, thanks to her father. Raised in a Cornish mansion called Manderley, which inspired the fictional Manderley in the novel Rebecca. Alfred Hitchcock directed an adaptation of the 1940 romantic psychological thriller. He also directed 1939 adventure thriller, Jamaica Inn, and 1963 horror thriller, The Birds, all based on her works. Daphne married Major Frederick Boyd Browning in 1932, who would later become a lieutenant general. They had 2 daughters and a son. She was very private and rarely mixed in society or gave interviews. She was quite warm and funny when she was hosting her own events. But with the release of the 1977 war epic film, A Bridge Too Far, in which Browning, who passed 12 years prior, in 1965, was put in a bad light. She denounced national newspapers. A biographer, Helen Taylor, claims that du Maurier confessed to her in 1965 that she had had an incestuous relationship with her father, and that he had been a violent alcoholic. Her mother was cold toward her because of her closeness with Gerard, describes herself as a boy trapped in a girl's body. She had a male alter ego named Eric Haven to unleash creative energy. Writers occasionally mask their own biography in fiction. Nonetheless, Dame du Maurier's dark and gothic nature, it made the 1973 masterpiece possible. Directed by Nicholas Jack Rogue, who co-directed 1970 British crime drama, Performance, starring Mick Jagger. I will visual summarize Don't Look Now, while discussing my thoughts. I suggest watching the film beforehand. The story begins on a tragic note, when Christine is playing catch with herself, while Johnny Jr. is riding his red bike. Someone called the British equivalent of CPS, John Baxter, starring Canadian actor Donald Sunderland, though never nominated, won an Oscar alongside Jennifer Lawrence, for a lifetime of indelible characters, rendered with unwavering truthfulness. He is known for his role in 1970 blockbuster black comedy war film, MASH, which launched the TV series. Julie Christie. Widely known for her role in 1965, Dr. Zhivago, adjusted for inflation, is currently ranked in the top 10 highest-grossing films ever. She won the Oscar for Best Actress in British Romantic Drama, Darling, the same year. Also starring in 1975 satirical comedy film, Shampoo, alongside Goldie Hawn, and in 1978 fantasy comedy, Heaven Can Wait, both directed by Warren Beatty. Her last prominent film was 2006 Trauma, Away From Her, being nominated for an Oscar. She portrays Laura Baxter in this film. Although John Baxter can't hear anything outside, he senses something when Johnny Jr. breaks glass, which could be considered an omen, and starts running outside. We see Christine fall backwards. Literally a nail-biting moment, as John attempts resuscitation, to no avail. This nightmare will live in their family's conscience forever. In the near future they meet at a restaurant, both living in Venezia. 2 women seem to be staring at them while Laura is explaining renovations. When John opens a window, Gus blows dirt into Heather's eye. She bumps into Laura. Feeling the need to help, she leads them to the laboratory. We can see Heather sporting a mermaid brooch. They apologize for staring earlier on. As Laura removes the speck out Heather's eye, she points out that her sister Wendy is blind. A renowned oracle, Wendy tells Laura she sees a girl in a red mat laughing. This brings out grief, in which Laura, thinking it was Christine in Wendy's vision, ends up fainting and knocking down the dinner table. The paramedics arrive, put her in a vessel and sail away into the beautiful Venezia waters. In the hospital Laura tells John that Christine is with them. At first hesitant, John comes to believe she is happy. They decide to visit the church of their purpose for being in Italy. John states his displeasure in the place, while Laura feels at home. As John is praying, Wendy lets out a sarcastic. They meet the bishop with Laura apologizing for her tardiness. She kisses his ring like he's the godfather. Laura is the contractor to John Baxter's business. She is a non-believer. The bishop states, "Do you think God has other priorities than restoring old churches? If God's children stopped listening?" He was indirectly downplaying John's healing process, refuting his busybody profession as an illusion. The bishop was out of line. It's a sin to make a man question the Creator. Once the bishop was gone, he asked Laura, "You have a sensation that he doesn't give an ecclesiastical fuck about the church?" John definitely got offended. This paints him in a more hopeful and faithful picture, in comparison to his wife. At home, she smiles at the sight of an item that should cause her grief. This shows Laura is handling grief in a positive manner. She even plays a joke on John by allowing a maid to catch him in the nude. They rekindle their intimacy. She sucks on his toes. If that ain't love, then what is? We see the couple walk through along the red carpet, introducing them into the murderous streets of Venezia. In this scene, Laura uses the excuse of mice to depart from John. She ends up on the bridge behind him. Then suddenly we hear a shriek and witness a figure in a red mac pass through the bridge in front of John. How did Laura not have a clue? After last night's brush with death, John witnessed the sisters staring at him. Then Laura follows them to plan a seance. She tells Wendy that John has clairvoyance. Wendy replies, of course, he has the gift, even if he is fighting it, or doesn't know it. She might be referring to John Baxter Jr., trying to communicate telepathically with a powerful demon and occult. This proves the church, being renovated, is disguising itself as clerical. At this point, Laura's interest in sorcery will be the downfall of the Baxters. Her red boots remind me of Proverbs 5:5, which reads, her feet go down to death, her steps take hold on hell. He refutes the seance as unnatural. Laura then showcases her cruelty by blaming John for Christine's death. The sisters are seen laughing in sinister fashion. They are either plotting to harm our power couple, or maybe just John, for Laura is now part of the cult. Heather coerces Laura to take a shot of hard drink. Wendy is seen wearing a waitress vest holding a red handkerchief. Then Wendy caresses a statuette. All three women are wearing red footwear. We see John in the lobby, ringing a concierge bell set on top of a red leaf pamphlet. A man in red catches John trying to peep into the seance. John pretends not to know Italian and runs away, deciding to wait outside for Laura. Back at their hotel, Laura warns John to get out of Venezia because of impending danger. John, in angelic wrath, says Christine is dead. Dead. Heartbroken because, now he knows Laura is clearly unhinged. She even pretends to take her medicine. There is a call from John Jr.'s boarding school. He is seen under a red blanket, injured with a lump in the middle of his forehead. Laura quickly decides to fly to England to make sure he is okay. On checking out, we see John eavesdropping on the concierge's Italian conversation, before waving goodbye as she sails away. Job heads back to the church, proceeding on to remodeling a mosaic. The sisters are again seen laughing in depravity, as John is climbing such great heights. As he is matching the pieces of the mosaic, a large plank nearly hits him, causing the unstable scaffolding to give out. He hangs onto a rope with a red tip, for dear life. This is the second time facing death, the first being, that night, he saw a figure with a red mac. Is there a plot to murder John? The bishop states his father died from a fall as they come across a crime scene. The bishop is seen signaling across on notification there is a corpse in the water, or maybe he is hypnotizing the police officer with his Mr. Crane. They pull out the body of the woman. One can only imagine the anguish John is recollecting. In Du Maurier's story, Christine died from meningitis. The emphasis on water is a remarkable theme in the film. In the beginning, Laura is seeking an answer to a question. Christine asked, if the world is round, why is a frozen pond flat? When Laura proves that water indeed curves, John states nothing is as it seems. The perception of reality and illusion is mostly undefined. There seems to be a disconnection between the religious artwork John is restoring and what it represents. Heather's mermaid brooch resembles the circular red ink mark seeping from the figure. John's reliability seems to take a dip from here, when he spots Laura with the sisters. They are leading a cortege of a funeral proceeding. John yells from the top of his lungs to no avail. He comes to the conclusion that his wife is kidnapped or at least under the clutches of the cult. He starts searching for her, at the hotel, even filing a police report. We spot the sisters, this time without Laura. Did they change clothes? Or, is John going mad? The sketch artist's skill is to make the living appear dead. He has a detective follow John through the streets. We come across a few buildings with red marks. Also a reflection of Christine correlating with the hooded figure running from danger, the night he wandered the alleyways. He looks for the sisters, and finally comes across the hostel from that night of the seance. He is shown there, room, now vacant because of John's peeping. The detective clears John of suspicion. We see the bishop wearing a different attire, and on telling him John Baxter wants to see him. John makes a long-distance call to England using one of the church's phones. He calls his son's school and it turns out Laura is there. She speaks about John Jr. being alright. No concussion, only a little bump. John insists he saw Laura earlier. He obviously doesn't believe her. After all, it's only a 2-hour flight and could have postponed it to attend that funeral proceeding. She tells him to stay at Alberto's, that is the bishop. He heads back at the police station where he encounters Wendy. She was arrested because of John's report. He decides to walk with her. Meanwhile Laura arrives in Venezia. She asks the boat driver why are they not heading to the hotel? He answers, I was told to take you to Mr. Baxter, he is at the police station. Once she gets there, the detective then gives Laura an address to Wendy's hotel. John walks Wendy to her hotel, then she proceeds to have a scene, scaring him off. She tells Heather to fetch him, not to let him go. Laura arrives and Wendy says Christine told you to leave Venice. Laura searches for him. We see the bishop's red candle next to a blonde adolescent shepherd with a flock of sheep. He wakes up. Does he sense something? We then see John chasing the red-hooded figure. He definitely does not think it's Christine, but a helpless girl wandering around while there is a killer on the loose. A vigilante thinks John is trying to hurt the figure and chases after both of them, to which John closes an iron gate, keeping Laura and the vigilante out. Laura yells, "Darlings," as the hooded figure reveals itself to be a dwarf resembling the gargoyle he fixed. Wendy lets out a painful shriek as John gets his carotid artery sliced. He seems to put all the pieces together as his life flashes before his eyes. Based on John's flashback, he found out about the satanic cult. They mocked his very existence, how he handles grief and his concern for his wife's depression, his trust for his wife, and love for his kids. The reason Wendy wanted him back was because he saw the pictures, and they matched some of the murdered people. He solved the crime and needed to save the girl wearing a red mac, but it was not the girl who was in danger. He was murdered by the third sister, resembling the gargoyle he built. This is indeed a cynical way to play with the human. But who pioneered this satanic network? The red carpet was the planned night of his death, but somehow the dwarf killed the wrong person. Laura was to witness it, and this is why she deflects John's concern, by pretending she didn't see or hear anything. Just like she pretended not to see him during his funeral proceeding, John was supposed to die the second time in that fall, where the tip of the rope was red. The bishop could have had John in a safer scaffolding. There are plenty around the room. Laura had to fly back to England and wait for John to call, then gaslighting him into believing he is crazy. He found out of Laura's deception but only after his neck was sliced. Laura took an unnatural approach, sorcery. She loved her daughter so much, and blamed John for Christine. Ultimately, she might have been indirectly involved with her husband's death, but she became deceptive once she met with the sisters, meaning there is more to the lewd woman with the scarlet boots. She could have planned John's death before Christine drowned. After all, she referred to the dwarf as darling. She loved John, but maybe he had to die. The cult wanted this, but who is the head of the cult? The one who will wear the royal vestment has the third eye, murdered his sister and is the one who killed John. An adolescent boy will be the shepherd of the cult. A dipole complex, as Sigmund Freud refers to it, is developed between the ages of 3 to 6. He is a neurologist and the founder of psychoanalysis. He states, when a boy directs his sexual desire upon his mother, and directs jealousy and rivalry against his father to facilitate union with mother, the boy's instincts wants to kill father, but because the pragmatic ego, based upon the reality principle, he fears in competing to possess the one female. The boy remains doubtful about his father's place in the family, but because fear in the physically greater father, the boy irrationally possesses the fear of castration because of his lewd desires. The female version is called the Electra complex. This involves the term penis envy. This is significant because the author of Don't Look Now, Du Maurier, seems to have the Electra complex. After all, an author's writing is based on their own biography. Tell me what you think. Please comment. Thanks for watching.